I used to think I knew the rhythm of my life so well I could walk it in the dark. Same street, same drive to work, same grocery store on Sundays, same jokes my husband told when he wanted to feel charming again. We'd been married 12 years. Not perfect, not romantic in that movie way, but steady. His name's Mark. He's the kind of guy people trust instantly. Soft voice, friendly eyes, always willing to help carry boxes or fix a neighbor's fence. When we moved into our house in Maplewood Estates, he baked cookies for the neighbors. I remember watching him from the kitchen window, laughing with people we barely knew, thinking I was lucky. I worked in marketing for a regional healthcare company. Long hours, lots of deadlines. Mark worked in sales. Flexible schedule, lots of driving, client lunches. That was always the explanation. The first crack was so small I almost missed it. It was a Thursday night in early October. He came home later than usual, said traffic was brutal. He smelled different. Not cologne exactly. Something floral, lighter than anything I owned. I asked him if he changed soap at the gym. He shrugged and said maybe they switched brands. I remember thinking that was a weird answer, but I was exhausted and had a presentation the next morning. I let it go. Then it happened again. And again. Little things. His phone always face down now. Notifications silenced. He started showering the second he got home, even if it was late. He smiled more at his screen than he did at me. When I asked who he was texting, he said work. Always work. I wanted to believe him because the alternative felt too big, too dramatic for my life. Cheating was something that happened to other women. Women on Reddit threads and TikTok confession videos. Not me. Not us. One Saturday I went to grab his phone because mine was dead and I wanted to check the weather. He snatched it out of my hand so fast it startled me. His face changed instantly. Not angry, but alert, like I'd walked in on him doing something private. He laughed it off, said his phone was acting weird and he didn't want me messing it up. I laughed too, because that's what you do when you're scared to push. That night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling fan, listening to his breathing. I kept replaying the last year of our marriage in my head, wondering when exactly I stopped feeling like his priority and started feeling like a roommate who paid half the bills. We didn't fight much. That was the thing. No screaming, no slam doors, just distance, quiet, polite conversations about groceries and yard work and whether we needed new tires before winter. The real shift came when he started traveling more. Same town over, he said, just day trips, a new client territory. It made sense. We live in New Jersey. Everything is one town over. He'd leave mid-morning and come back late evening, sometimes after 9. Always tired. Always saying he'd grab dinner on the road. I started eating alone more, sitting at the kitchen island with Netflix playing in the background, waiting for texts that said he was on his way home. One Tuesday, my car wouldn't start. I called him, hoping he was nearby. He didn't answer. I called again. Voicemail. I ended up Ubering to work, irritated but trying not to spiral. Around noon, I checked our shared credit card account to see if we'd been charged for the Uber yet. That's when I saw it. A charge from a small Italian restaurant in a town called Brookfield. I recognized the name because my friend Jenna used to live there. It was 40 minutes away, not part of Mark's usual route. I told myself it was probably a client lunch, but the charge was at 7:42 p.m. Dinner time. For two. The total was more than what one person would spend. I felt that sinking feeling in my stomach, the one you get when you already know the answer but your brain is still trying to protect you. When he got home that night, I asked him casually how his day was. He said busy. I asked where he ate. He said he grabbed something quick near the office. I asked where exactly. He hesitated, just for a second. Then he named a place 10 minutes from his office. Not Brookfield. Not Italian. I didn't confront him. Not yet. I needed more. Proof. I hated that about myself, that I suddenly felt like a detective in my own marriage. But I also knew if I accused him without evidence, he'd deny it, make me feel crazy, and I'd lose whatever chance I had to see the truth clearly. Over the next few weeks, I started paying attention in a way I never had before. I noted dates, times, patterns. His travel days lined up with the same days every week. Tuesdays and Fridays. Always Brookfield charges. Restaurants. A grocery store I'd never shopped at. A gas station off Route 17. One night. A movie theater. 2 tickets. The scariest part wasn't the betrayal itself. It was how easily he lied. How normal he seemed while doing it. He still kissed my forehead in the mornings. Still asked if I needed anything from the store.
Still talked about future vacations, home renovations, retirement, like none of this was happening. One Friday, I left work early. I didn't tell him. I drove to Brookfield. My hands were shaking the entire way. I felt like I was stepping out of my life and into someone else's. I parked across the street from the Italian restaurant I'd seen on the credit card statement. I told myself, if he wasn't there, I'd go home and apologize to him for being paranoid. His car pulled up 20 minutes later. He got out, adjusted his jacket, checked his phone, and smiled in a way I hadn't seen directed at me in a long time. Then she arrived. A woman about my age, brown hair, pulled back casually. She left when she saw him. He hugged her. Not a friendly hug, a familiar one. They walked inside together like this was routine. I sat there, frozen, watching the door like it might swallow me whole. My chest felt tight. I couldn't breathe. Every sound seemed too loud. Cars passing, people talking on the sidewalk. I wanted to scream, to run in there and confront them, to throw something to make it stop. Instead, I sat there until my legs went numb. I followed them afterward. I don't even remember deciding to do it. I just did, like my body was on autopilot. They drove a few blocks to a quiet residential street lined with townhouses. He parked in a driveway. Her driveway. I watched him walk inside with her, keys in hand, like he belonged there. That was the moment everything shattered. Not just that he was cheating, but that he had a whole other life, a place, a routine, a relationship, one town over. I drove home in silence. When he came back later that night, he told me he was exhausted and went straight to bed. I lay next to him, staring at the dark, knowing my marriage was already over, even though neither of us had said it out loud yet. I didn't sleep that night. I don't mean tossing and turning. I mean lying perfectly still, staring at the shadow where the wall met the ceiling, listening to Mark breathe like nothing in the world had changed. Every inhale felt like an insult. Every exhale felt like a lie settling deeper into the mattress between us. I kept replaying the way he smiled at her, the ease of it, the way his body leaned toward hers like it was muscle memory.
I wondered how long he'd been practicing that smile without me. The next morning, he kissed my cheek like always and asked if I wanted coffee. His voice was gentle, familiar. I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. I watched him pour creamer into my mug with the same hand that had unlocked her front door hours earlier. I wanted to throw the coffee at the wall. Instead, I said thank you and told him I had an early meeting. At work, I was useless. Emails blurred together. My phone buzzed and my heart jumped every time, even though it was never him saying anything real. I kept checking the clock, counting down to Tuesday. Another Brookfield day, another lie I'd now see clearly. I didn't confront him right away because I needed to understand the scope of it. That sounds cold, maybe even calculated, but I needed answers I knew he wouldn't give me voluntarily. I needed to know who she was, what he told her, whether she knew about me, whether I was the other woman in my own marriage. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I went back to Brookfield, this time during the day. I parked down the street from that townhouse and watched. Around noon, she came out, jeans, sweater, hair loose this time. She looked normal, not some villain. Not younger, not prettier, just different. She locked the door and got into her car. I memorized the license plate like it mattered. I followed her to a yoga studio, then to a coffee shop. I sat 2 tables away from her, pretending to work on my laptop while watching her stir her drink, scroll through her phone, laugh at something on the screen. I wondered if it was Mark. I wondered if he was telling her he missed her while telling me he was stuck in traffic. I felt insane, detached, like I was watching someone else unravel in real time. That evening, Mark came home with takeout, Thai food, my favorite. He said he thought of me when he ordered it. I nodded and ate quietly, tasting nothing. He talked about a client issue. I nodded again. I hated how easy it was for him to lie. I hated how practiced he was. The following Tuesday, I didn't go to work. I told my boss I was sick. I parked near her townhouse again. This time, I saw Mark arrive mid-morning. He didn't rush. He carried a small overnight bag. He kissed her on the porch. Not rushed, not guilty, comfortable. That was when it hit me fully. This wasn't an affair. This was a parallel life. I waited until he left, then did something reckless. I walked up to her door and knocked. She opened it wearing one of his sweatshirts. I recognized it immediately. Gray, faded at the cuffs, the one I bought him 3 years ago. Her face shifted when she saw me. Confusion first, then caution. "Can I help you?" she asked. My mouth went dry. "I'm Mark's wife." The color drained from her face so fast I thought she might pass out.
She stepped back like the words had physical weight. What? I'm his wife, I repeated. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. We've been married 12 years. We live in Maplewood. She stared at me like I'd spoken another language. No, that's not... He told me he was divorced. Of course he did. She let me in. We sat at her kitchen table, the same table I'd watched him walk toward days earlier. She poured water with shaking hands. Her name was Lauren. She'd been seeing Mark for almost a year. He told her his divorce was messy, that his ex-wife lived in denial, that he kept things separate to avoid drama. He told her he traveled for work, that he stayed with a friend sometimes, that the townhouse was his place. I thought we were building something, she said, her voice breaking. He said he loved me. I believed her. That was the worst part. I showed her pictures from my phone. Her wedding, holidays, our house, the life he was still actively living with me. She covered her mouth, tears spilling freely now. I had no idea, she kept saying. I swear, I would never. I didn't blame her. I didn't have the energy to. We were both victims of the same man, just in different ways. When I left, I felt hollow, like the confrontation had taken everything out of me instead of giving me closure. I drove home and waited. Mark came back late that night. He looked startled to see me sitting in the living room, lights on. We need to talk, I said. He tried to play dumb at first, asked what was wrong. When I told him I'd been to Brookfield, his face collapsed. No anger, no denial, just defeat. How long? I asked. He sat down heavily. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. How long? I repeated. A year, he whispered. I laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. You had a whole relationship for a year and thought it wouldn't happen like this. He cried, real tears. He said he felt disconnected from me, that things had been bad for a long time, that he didn't know how to stop once it started. He said he loved us both. That was the line that finally broke something in me. You don't get to love me like this, I said quietly. He begged, promised to end it, promised therapy, promised transparency. I listened without responding. I felt like I was watching him drown and realizing I no longer cared enough to save him. I told him to leave, just for the night. He hesitated, then grabbed his bag, the same one I'd seen him carry into her house. He didn't say where he was going. He didn't need to. That night, alone in our bed, I cried until my chest hurt. Not just for the betrayal, but for the version of my life I'd believed in so completely. For the years I couldn't get back. For the man I thought I knew. By morning, I knew one thing for sure. Whatever happened next, nothing would ever be the same. The house felt wrong without him. Too quiet, like it was holding its breath. I kept expecting to hear his keys, his footsteps, the familiar creak of the floorboard outside the bedroom. Instead, there was nothing, just the hum of the fridge and the occasional car passing outside. I slept on my side of the bed anyway, curled around the empty space like it still belonged to me. Mark texted the next morning, just one line. I'm so sorry, I don't know what to do. I stared at the message for a long time, but put my phone face down on the counter. I didn't reply. I didn't know what to say that wouldn't open a door I wasn't ready to walk through. Lauren texted me too. I hadn't expected that. She said she'd ended things with him, that she felt sick about everything, that she hoped I was okay. I believed her, and somehow that made it worse. There was no villain I could easily hate, just two women wrecked by the same man, and a man who'd managed to fracture his own life without ever really leaving either of us. I took the week off work. I told my boss I had a family emergency, which felt like the truest lie I'd ever told. I barely left the house. I moved through the days like I was underwater, everything muffled and slow. I'd catch myself reaching for my phone to text Mark something mundane, like we were still a team, and then I'd remember. Every time felt like reopening a wound. On Thursday, he showed up unannounced. I heard his car before I saw him. That familiar engine noise made my stomach twist. I didn't open the door right away. I watched him through the front window, standing there with his hands shoved into his jacket pockets, shoulders slumped like he was the one who'd been wronged. I almost laughed at that. When I finally opened the door, neither of us spoke for a moment.
He looked smaller somehow, less confident. His eyes were red, his beard uneven like he hadn't shaved in days. I ended it, he said immediately, like that was a magic phrase. I stepped aside and let him in, not because I wanted him there, but because I needed to hear everything without imagining the rest. We sat across from each other in the living room, the same couch where we'd watched movies, planned trips, talked about repainting the walls. I don't expect forgiveness, he said. I just want to explain. Explain what? I asked. How you lied to my face every day for a year. He flinched. I know it sounds horrible, I felt invisible. I didn't know how to talk to you anymore. I felt something sharp rise in my chest. You didn't feel invisible when you were having dinner dates and movie nights and sleepovers with someone else. He looked down. It wasn't like that at first. It always is, I said. He told me the story he'd probably been rehearsing since the night I confronted him. How it started as friendship, how he felt desired again, how it got out of hand, how he never meant for it to last so long. He said he compartmentalized, like that made it sound clinical instead of cruel. What was I to you during all of this? I asked quietly. Just the other part of your schedule? He looked up then, eyes glossy. You were my wife. That answer hurt more than anything else he'd said, because it meant he really thought he could keep both lives running indefinitely, like parallel tracks that would never collide. He reached for my hand. I pulled it back. I need space, I said. Real space. Not another promise. He nodded, defeated. I'll stay with my brother. After he left, I finally cried again. Not the choking, uncontrollable sobs from before. This was quieter, sadder, like mourning something already buried. The next few weeks blurred together. We communicated mostly through short texts about logistics. Bills, mail. He asked if I'd consider couples therapy. I didn't answer. Every time I pictured sitting in a room with him explaining my pain while he nodded and apologized, I felt exhausted before we even began. People started to notice something was off. My sister asked why Mark hadn't been at Thanksgiving planning. Jenna asked if everything was okay. I gave vague answers. I wasn't ready to let the story out into the world yet. Saying it out loud felt like cementing it as real. One night Lauren called me. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. She sounded fragile. She said Mark had shown up at her place too, crying, saying he'd ruined everything. She told him to leave. She said she felt stupid, used. She asked me how I was handling it. I don't know if I am, I said honestly. We talked for almost an hour. About the lies he told both of us, about how convincing he was, about how we both ignored red flags because we wanted to believe the version of him we loved. There was something strangely comforting about talking to someone who understood the full scope of it without explanation. After that call, something shifted. I stopped protecting him in my mind. I stopped wondering what I'd done wrong. The pattern became clearer the more distance I had. This wasn't about a rough patch or unmet needs. It was about his ability to deceive and rationalize and split himself in two. A month later, he asked if we could talk again. In person. He said he'd started therapy. That he was reading books about infidelity. That he was committed to change. We met at a coffee shop halfway between our house and his brother's place. Neutral ground. He looked better. More put together. That almost annoyed me. I want to fight for us, he said. I'll do whatever it takes. I studied him across the table. This man I'd built a life with. The man who'd lived another one just down the road. I don't know if I want to be fought for, I said slowly. I think I want peace. He looked stunned. You don't think this is worth saving? I think the version of our marriage I believed in doesn't exist, I said. And I don't know if I want to rebuild something from this foundation. He reached for my hand again, tentative. This time I let him hold it, just for a second. I needed to feel it to be sure. It felt familiar. But it didn't feel safe. When I pulled away, I knew my answer even if I hadn't said it yet. Driving home, I realized something else too. The anger I'd been holding was slowly turning into clarity. I wasn't broken. I wasn't unlovable. I'd been loyal. I'd been honest. I'd shown up. And that mattered, even if my marriage didn't survive. I started packing his things the next day. Packing his things was harder than I expected. Not because I wanted him back, but because every object carried a version of us that felt real at the time. His old college hoodie stuffed in the back of the closet. The watch I gave him for our 10th anniversary. A stack of birthday cards he never threw away. I moved slowly, pausing more than I needed to, letting myself feel it instead of rushing past it. I wasn't interested in being strong for appearances. I just wanted to be honest with myself. He came by to get his boxes on a Sunday afternoon. The sky was gray, the kind of dull winter day where everything feels suspended. We didn't argue. We didn't cry. We moved around each other like polite strangers, careful not to touch. At one point, he stood in the doorway of the bedroom, looking at the bed we'd shared for over a decade. I never meant to hurt you, he said quietly. I know, I replied. And I did. That was the most complicated part. He wasn't cruel. He was selfish. There's a difference. And sometimes that difference makes forgiveness harder, not easier. When he left for the last time, I locked the door and slid down against it, my back pressed to the wood. I didn't cry. I just sat there, breathing, letting the finality settle. The house didn't feel haunted anymore.
It felt empty in a way that had potential. The divorce process was exactly as miserable as everyone says. Lawyers, paperwork, negotiations about things I never thought I'd have to divide. He didn't fight me on much. I think guilt made him compliant. Or maybe he just wanted it over as badly as I did. We sold the house, split the accounts, signed the papers in a quiet office that smelled like stale coffee and printer ink. When it was done, I felt lighter and sadder at the same time, like setting down a heavy box after carrying it for miles, only to realize your arms don't know what to do without the weight. Lauren moved away. She texted me once to say she was starting fresh in another state. I wished her well and meant it. We never spoke again after that. She was a chapter that overlapped mine, nothing more. I moved into a small apartment closer to the city. 1 bedroom, big windows, loud neighbors. It felt like someone else's life at first. I bought cheap furniture and didn't overthink it. I let myself be messy. I let myself eat cereal for dinner. I let myself exist without checking in with anyone. There were moments that hit me out of nowhere. Standing in line at the grocery store and realizing no one was expecting me home. Hearing a song we used to play on road trips. Seeing a man with the same build as Mark walking down the street and feeling my chest tighten before I remembered it wasn't him. But there was relief too. Deep, unexpected relief. I didn't have to second-guess my reality anymore.
I didn't have to wonder where he was or who he was with. The constant low-level anxiety I'd been living with for years faded, and only then did I realize how heavy it had been. Mark reached out a few times after the divorce was finalized. Updates about therapy, apologies phrased more carefully now. Once, he asked if I'd ever consider getting dinner, just to talk. I told him no. Not because I hated him, but because I respected myself enough to not reopen a wound that had finally started to close. A year passed, then another. I started dating again, slowly, cautiously. Coffee dates, walks, conversations that didn't feel like auditions or confessions. I was upfront about my past without making it my entire personality. Some people disappeared when they heard it. Others stayed. I learned to trust my instincts again, to pay attention to actions instead of words. One night, I ran into Mark by accident, a grocery store near my apartment. We stood there awkwardly, between the produce and frozen foods, 2 people who once knew everything about each other now struggling with small talk. He looked fine. Older, maybe. Softer around the edges. "You look good," he said. "So do you," I replied, and we both knew it didn't mean what it used to. We said goodbye without drama, without longing. I walked home feeling strangely peaceful. Sometimes I think about that version of myself, sitting in a car outside an Italian restaurant, watching her life collapse through a glass window. I want to reach back and tell her she survives it, that the pain doesn't last forever, that losing a marriage isn't the same as losing yourself. He lived a second relationship 1 town over, and for a while that fact defined everything. But it doesn't anymore. Now it's just a truth I carry, not a weight I drag behind me. My life is quieter now, smaller in some ways, but it's honest. And for the first time in a long time, that feels like enough.